Q2 tragedy on the roadway. Two teenagers lose their lives in a single vehicle crash near the airport. We'll have the details. Plus, not only surviving, but thriving.
It was tough. It was really tough.
One Billings man whose life was flipped upside down Christmas Day is now using his story to motivate others. And
I'm Allie Kaiser. Family planning and the succession of farms and ranches is a vital part of agriculture, but it is often not discussed until it needs to be. I spoke with some Montana ranchers to see how they are having these difficult conversations before it is too late.
the MTN 430 news starts right now. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday. I'm Russ Riesinger. Two teenagers are dead and two others are injured after a single vehicle crash early this morning on the rims. That crash happened around 2:30 this morning east of the 27th Street roundabout on Airport Road. According to Billings police, the vehicle was eastbound when the driver lost control and left the roadway, causing it to roll. Three of the occupants were ejected, with a 16-year-old girl and 18-year-old girl both dying on scene. The other two in the car were transported to the hospital, but the severity of their injuries are not yet known. Police say the initial investigation indicates that speed is a contributing factor in the crash. As of now, no charges have been filed. Airport Road was closed for around 10 hours after the accident, but has since reopened. For the first time in 2025, a person has been injured by a bison inside Yellowstone National Park. According to park officials, that incident happened Sunday around 3:15 in the Lake Village area of the park. In the encounter, a 47-year-old Florida man was gored by a bison after he approached it too closely. The park says he sustained minor injuries and was treated by medical personnel. These attacks are not exactly rare in the park, with bison injuring more people in Yellowstone than any other animal. There were two reported bison incidents in 2024 and one in 2023. A Billings man is not only beating the odds, he is now thriving. We first met Andrew Walker in January after he suffered a tragic infection on Christmas Day of last year. That infection led to his leg being amputated, but it hasn't slowed him down one bit. Our Charlie Kleps catches back up with Walker, is not only making great strides, but motivated to help others.
The early days certainly weren't easy. Back in January, when Andrew Walker first came to terms that an infection had cost him his right leg.
I woke up January 9th, no idea where I was.
He was filled with confusion. His voice was raspy after being in a coma for nearly 2 weeks.
I've got 3 boys and a wife, and I'm just really glad I'm still here.
But he was also excited, nearing release from the Rehabilitation Hospital of Montana and returning to his family with big goals in mind.
I'm gonna get a prosthetic, and I'll be doing the same stuff I was doing before. In 4 months, you wouldn't even know.
Fast forward to now, Walker couldn't have been more right. He's now getting used to this prosthetic and continuing to progress every single day.
I'm seeing myself return back to who I was before.
He really just took off, and every session he was doing better.
Walker's therapist, Jeff Smith, says it's been amazing to see his hard work pay off.
It's incredibly rewarding, and it's hard to put words on it.
But it hasn't come without its speed bumps. Walker says the initial return to home was a mental challenge, reminding him of what he couldn't do.
That's like a reality check of where I'm at in my life.
Sometimes sending him into a dark place when he'd reach out to a friend.
The other day I was having kind of a bad day, and I just messaged one of my friends who's an amputee and just said, hey, having a hard time. She kind of talked me through it.
Now Walker is adding to his inspirational story, working closely with the Rehabilitation Hospital of Montana to set up a support group for amputees just like him.
It's just a good thing to do, to help someone who's having that dark moment and say, hey, it's going to be okay.
An emotional roller coaster that isn't finished. Walker is still focused on taking in every moment, one step at a time.
I can't really change what happened to me, but what I can do is try to find those incremental 1% improvements every day.
In Billings, Charlie Kleps, MTN News.
Well, it was an interesting commute to school this morning for students in Pryor as they hopped on their bikes to take the 15-minute trip to their classrooms. From kindergarten all the way to high school, everyone found a reason to join in. The Walk and Bike to School event is part of a national bike and roll day and goes far beyond just the actual activity. It's promoting physical activity. It also teaches safe pedestrian and bike skills to children and awareness for how walkable and bikeable a community can be. This event is now in its 13th year.
A ridge of high pressure provided plenty of sunshine and much warmer weather to Montana and Wyoming on this Wednesday. Only a couple clouds, mainly over the higher terrain, and they're not going to be bringing us any rain or thunderstorms, but there are some more chances in the short term and the long term. First of all, for tonight, a mostly clear to clear sky, but not too cool. 40s and lower 50s for lows. Tomorrow we'll have a cold front moving through with a chance for some afternoon and evening showers and thunderstorms, and we'll have a little bit less active weather on Friday. Your forecast coming up.
History is in the process of being made at the Vatican, where 133 cardinals are now taking part in selecting the next pope to lead the world's 1.4 billion Catholics. The start of the conclave comes less than 3 weeks after the death of Pope Francis. CBS News' Bradley Blackburn has the latest.
Black smoke rose up over St. Peter's Square Wednesday, signaling the cardinals were unsuccessful in selecting a new pope in their first round of voting.
This is a feeling out exercise. A conservative cardinal, leading conservative cardinal elector, told me yesterday that a bunch of them intend to vote for Cardinal Erdo from Hungary to see how much strength they actually have on the first ballot.
Earlier, in rituals going back centuries, the 133 voting cardinals entered the Sistine Chapel, each taking an oath of secrecy before the doors to the historic chapel closed, marking the official start of the conclave and cutting them off from communications with the outside world.
I'm not Catholic, but I come from a Catholic family, and so just having that history behind it and being able to witness this, really beautiful and very emotional.
The cardinals come from 70 countries, including 10 from the U.S. Pope Francis chose the overwhelming majority. That black smoke is a disappointment for the thousands gathered here in St. Peter's Square, but it's no surprise. No pope in modern history has been elected on the first ballot. A new CBS News poll shows more than a third of U.S. Catholics hope the next pontiff will be more conservative than Pope Francis, while 21% want someone more progressive. What are you hoping for in a new pope?
A holy man. Hopefully somebody that is a pragmatist and somewhat conservative.
We really need someone who can accept and embrace everyone regardless of where you're from.
The Cardinals will keep casting ballots until they reach a 2/3 consensus. Bradley Blackburn, CBS News, the Vatican.
Airports across the country are seeing real changes at security checkpoints today. After repeated delays, Americans traveling within the U.S. now must show a real ID to board a plane or be prepared to face extra screenings. The real ID will have a gold or black star in the corner. TSA is encouraging passengers who are not Real ID compliant to show up earlier than normal for additional screening. You can also use a passport in place of a Real ID.
Take you to a secondary line where there's an additional form to fill out, as well as additional forms of identification that they will ask you about.
This requirement takes effect 20 years after Congress passed the Real ID Act to prevent fraud in the wake of the 9/11 attacks. Coming up at 5:30, we'll dive into how these changes are being received in Billings. President Donald Trump is doubling down on tariffs against China. When asked this afternoon about removing those taxes, his answer was a simple no. White House correspondent Haley Bolt has the latest.
President Trump taking a firm stance on trade with China, telling reporters in the Oval Office Wednesday he would not lower the 145% tariffs against China in order to get them to negotiate. It comes ahead of a meeting between U.S. and Chinese officials later this week in Switzerland. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer are expected to take part.
I mean, look, we were losing $1 trillion a year. Now we're not losing anything, you know? That's the way I look at it. We were losing with China on trade $1 trillion a year. More, actually. 1.1. But let's say $1 trillion. You know what we're losing now? Nothing. That's not bad.
Well, the U.S. has suggested over the course of its trade agenda rollout, China must come to the table and has stressed the significant impacts it believes the tariffs will have for the PRC. China has maintained its opposition and claimed the U.S. requested the meeting.
This meeting is at the request of the United States. China firmly opposes the indiscriminate imposition of tariffs by the U.S. side, and this position has not changed.
Scripps News asked President Trump about the upcoming meeting.
China said the U.S. initiated the trade talks this weekend and that its position hasn't changed. Are you still confident you can reach a deal with China?
They said we initiated?
Yes.
Well, I think they ought to go back and study their files. Okay? I do think that.
Meanwhile, when pressed on the potential for exemptions in trade policy for items necessary for families after Secretary Bessent told lawmakers it was under consideration, Trump said he would think about it, but cautioned he is, quote, not looking to have so many exemptions. Haley Bull, Scripps News Group, Washington.
Many families in the world of agriculture have the dream of passing their farms and ranches on to the next generation. But without talking about how that will look, that legacy might not continue. In our Montana Ag Report, MTN's Allie Kaiser dives into how to best tackle those difficult discussions.
It is something many of us do not want to think about. A family member passing away without leaving a will behind and not knowing what to do with what is left. In order to ease some of the fighting, some Montana ranchers are getting together to have these conversations ahead of time before they're left with questions.
He just says, I want the milk, I want the good stuff.
The Carey family are sixth-generation Montana ranchers in the Boulder Valley.
I don't think really, even when I graduated from high school, I never really thought twice about doing something else.
Husband and wife Kelly and Bo Carey work with Bo's family on the Devil's Fence Ranch and Dunn Canyon Cattle Company. Two of Bo's siblings moved, so the team consists of his younger brother, his wife, and his parents.
I don't know that ranchers retire. I think they just step back when they're not able to do all the things, but they never fully retire.
For many generational ranches and farms, the next steps can be a question mark. This is why family planning and succession is an annual topic of conversation at the Young Ag Couples Conference, which Kelly and Bo attended a couple years back.
The next generation is how we keep agriculture land and agriculture in production, and we're not farming houses, we're actually farming the land, so that's a big deal.
Attendees at the conference learned that communication is essential for successful succession. One speaker at the conference,
plans are so darn important. What if happens?
Professor Ron Hansen from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln says families should map out a plan with the following guidelines. Identify and adopt a legacy vision for the future. Draft ideas into a plan. Organize planning resources like an accountant, attorney, or estate planning and wealth management specialist. Clarify family member assumptions and expectations, and take action and set deadlines.
That's something that I've taken home with me as far as having that conversation with my dad and my aunt and saying, you know, you guys just kind of got control over this when Grandpa passed away, and I think that there's a better way to handle it instead of just waiting until you can't have that conversation.
Being able to look up to the previous generation, but also planning for the next generation, and like what legacy are we leaving, what does that look like, and really what are we looking to build.
Professor Hansen says the solution is for family members to start their planning process now and never later. In the Boulder Valley, I'm Allie Kaiser, MTN News.